Well, it is good to be back with you for another day of Bible study here as we continue on through our journey, Suit Up. As we make our way through this Bible study, our hope is that we can understand how we can best suit up to be followers of Jesus Christ. Or, I think even if you don't consider yourself a follower of Jesus or kind of questioning, I think that what we're finding here is that all of these things that we're going to talk about through this study are applicable just to really being a good person. It's unfortunate sometimes that whenever people who are followers of Jesus Christ are kind of present in the world, that they're not thought of as being good humans in the way that they act or the way that the world perceives them. And that may well be that they're not following the directions in the Bible on how to live, but they're following something else. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we understand what the Bible, what Jesus communicates should be the proper way to live and to be in the world. So we're working through this Bible study, Suit Up. So grateful for you to be a part of that today. You can download the entire Bible study schedule by going to this URL, go.christtable.today. Suit Up. It'll give you all of the readings there, and you can join us each and every day on this study, Monday through Thursday, for the next 5 weeks or so. All of this brought to you courtesy of Christ Table, and we would love to have you a part of what we are doing at Christ Table. Find out more about us by going to www.christtable.today, and feel free to sign up for our email list there. We send out emails regularly to kind of let you know what's going on in Christ Table, and so we would love to have you be a part of that with us. Got a couple of other things that we'd love to have you be a part of. With a spiritual resource box that we send out, I've got a couple of these that are still left. In fact, I found 3 or 4 more, so I've got somewhere around 7 or 8 of these. If you'd like to have one of these, just let me know. Or if you donate at Christ Table, we send one automatically to you for free. The reason I say that is because among the actual physical copy of the Bible study with lots of questions for you and your family, if you want to work through to go deeper in the study than even these videos, we also have a copy of this book in there, Holy Envy. It's a hardbound book. It's an incredible book. I've received amazing feedback from the people who have started reading this. It's from Barbara Brown Taylor, who to some of you will be familiar, but to many of you will be a new name. And you're going to fall in love with Barbara Brown Taylor. You're going to fall in love with this book. We'll send it to you if you ask or if you donate to Christ Table. The reason I bring that up is because tomorrow night, if you're watching this on the day that we release this Bible study, tomorrow night we're going to have a Zoom book discussion of the first couple of chapters of this book, Holy Envy. You can download it on Kindle or Amazon, and you can be a part of that, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time by going to go.christtable.today/discuss, and we'll be there to talk about the first few chapters of that book. Well, 1 Corinthians, we are continuing on from yesterday's study, verses 24 through 27. Let's dig in. When we come to Corinthians, one of the things that we have identified is that Paul is speaking to a church that has been having some problems. And one of the primary problems that this church, this group of people who follow Jesus, have been having is not really understanding the necessity of their beliefs impacting the way that they live their lives. And so one of the things that was very important in the very early years of Christianity was that those who were apostles, those who were priests, who were pastors, would help people understand that a journey with Jesus Christ should impact you. You should become a better person, a better version of you, maybe even a version of you that is unable to exist without Jesus. And you have this power that is inside of you from God in order to become that person, so you're not on your own. So if you find yourself on this journey with Jesus, or if you find yourself as part of a church and you're not becoming a better person, you're not becoming the best version of yourself, you're not becoming more like Jesus, there may well be something wrong. And so Paul is writing to this church in the city of Corinth who they're kind of experiencing that. There are some questions as to whether or not they are reflecting in the way that they live something that is more like Christ or something that is more like a world who is unlike Christ. You kind of know the difference of that, right? I mean, even if you aren't a Bible scholar, even if you haven't gone to church, at any point in your life or much in your life, you kind of have this idea of Jesus and who he is. He's a good guy. He taught a lot. He healed people. He took care of those who were poor and encouraged those around him to take care of those who were under-resourced. He had conversations and meals with people who the rest of the world turned their back on. Now, he did a lot more, but at a base level, this is maybe the most important thing to know about Jesus. So we kind of know that this is the example. And whenever somebody who says they're a member of a church or says they follow Christ don't really match up to that example of Jesus, there's a disconnect. And so Paul is talking about that to this church in Corinth whenever we come to chapter 9, verses 23. Actually, we're starting in 24 through 27. Paul has kind of been chipping away at this idea of how someone who is a person of faith or followership of Jesus should live. So Paul uses a metaphor here, one which will be familiar to some of you and is very familiar to me for reasons I'll talk about in just a moment. Verse 24, don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. Now, Paul here is speaking about what we've just come out of the Olympic Games. So this is kind of a familiar metaphor to most of us. Paul here is reflecting upon the Isthmian Games, which the Olympic Games are comparable to. But even if you've not been familiar with the Olympic Games, even if you've never been a sports person, you can still understand this idea that whenever you enter into a race, only one person's going to get the prize. And so work hard, run in such a way as though you will receive the prize. If you're not going to put the effort, the energy, the intentionality into it, why even waste the time to begin with? This has application in many other areas of life as well. If you're not going to put the time and the effort and the intentionality into a relationship, why even get into it in the first place? If you're not going to put the time and intentionality into your family or into children, why have children? If you're not going to do it at your job, if you're not going to do it if you're a part of a rec league, this has application in other places that oftentimes the amount of intentionality and effort that we put into something is subpar at best. In a race, that matters because only one person is going to win that prize. Trained for a marathon twice. Only ran one marathon. Now, the circumstances for the first one were a little out of my control, but it felt really bad to do all of that training and to not even win a prize. Everybody gets a medal in a marathon, but not everybody gets first place. To do all that training, but to never get a medal, to never really have the payoff of it. The second time, I knew I wasn't going to win that race. I was old and fat, and there were some people who were just gifted at long distance running, and that wasn't me. But the prize for me wasn't a first place medal. The prize for me was the finish line. And in a marathon, crossing the finish line is the prize that you win. A lot of people don't cross the finish line even though they start the race in a marathon. You had to be disciplined in your training. I think that there are parallels to that from the athletic world into the physical world, into the spiritual world. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. Paul says it's not as though being an athlete, being an Olympian, being in a rec league and playing to win, running a marathon are unimportant. No, not at all. But there are some things in life that are more important. Not that should keep you from doing those things, but that you should check yourself, and are you giving the same intentionality to the more important things in life that you are giving to that pursuit, that thing that you're chasing, that physical body, that prize, that bonus check, that promotion, that degree to hang on the wall. Those things are important things, maybe even necessary for you. But those things are going to fade away. That bonus check is going to get spent. Someday that education isn't going to mean as much as it did when you first received it. Trust me, I know. That promotion, well, it'll only get you so far. But whenever you do things to earn a spiritual prize, those things remain. The things that you do to become a better person, to become more like Christ, those things pay off forever, Paul says. So I run with purpose in every step. Paul speaking metaphorically here now. I'm not just shadow boxing. And I think that's an interesting phrase. Paul says, I do everything with purpose. I'm not just shadow boxing. What Paul is saying here is he does not, like some other boxers, throw punches that only hit the air. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that Paul doesn't train, but I think what Paul is saying here is that everything that he does is intentional. Everything that he does has a purpose, and he's not content to just train. He's not content to just pretend, but he wants to really be in the game. He wants to really do something that matters. It seems like a lot of people who are living the Christian life or say they're living the Christian life are only maybe pretending. They're in hiding, they're in training, they're never really getting out on the field and doing something with it. I think Paul says, what's the point of that? What is the point of naming Christ and committing yourself to faith or committing yourself to doing internal work, but it never really becomes something that you own in such a way that it becomes a part of you? I think, how can I say it? So a lot of people go to church. A lot of people use Christian words. A lot of people dress and act holy, or at least holier than you, holier than thou. On the outside, the words and the actions seem to indicate that there is a deep commitment to Christ. But deep down, it's just not there. It's a show, it's an act. It's a facade. That's shadow boxing. That's going through the motions without there really being any power behind it. Shadow boxing is much different than actually real boxing. Its purpose is different. Its payoff is different. Paul says, what's the point? So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body just like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. Paul says, I want to be all in. I don't want it to only go skin deep. I want to be through and through a follower of Jesus Christ. And I'm going to train and work hard to do that. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified because I wasn't all in. And I hate to tell you, there are a lot of people out there who preach Christ who are doing so from a facade. And at the end of the day, they will be disqualified from the race and win nothing. Don't let that be you. Make sure that you are intentional and that if you are going to do this life, run this race with Christ, that you give him a chance by being all in and see what happens. Paul essentially is saying here to those who are listening, that's going to take you exercising some self-control. There are lots of things that you are free to do, but may not be helpful for you. You know, running a marathon, it's not wrong to drink alcohol or to eat a lot of fatty foods. It's not wrong to lift a lot of weights. It's not wrong to do lots of things that for a normal person would be absolutely okay because they're not training for a marathon. But when you're training for a marathon, you have to have discipline. You have to have self-control so that you will be able to make it that 26.2 miles. And so what you have to do is you have to begin limiting things in your life that aren't bad, but which may not be helpful for getting you to where you want to go. And I think that at the end of the day, this is what Paul is saying here, and this is where we will close. Take an assessment. Well, first maybe decide who you want to be. And at the end of the day, what would be winning for you? What would be a win in your spiritual life and in your family life, in your relational life, in your Christian life? What's the goal? What's the prize? What's the outcome that you want to see? And then begin to maybe just do some reflection, some self-assessment. Are the things that I'm doing, that I'm participating in, that I'm internalizing, that I'm reading, that I'm engaging in, that I'm doing, that I'm utilizing my time for, are those things pushing me further towards that finish line that I want to reach? Or are they maybe, though not wrong, are they maybe not helpful, or maybe even in some ways counterproductive? And when we find those things, it's time to exercise a little bit of self-control. Well, it's been good to be with you. Looking forward to being back with you tomorrow as we continue on in our Bible study. Until that time, though, happy reading.